Hello and good day. We are the reporters for Group 6, and in this video we will be discussing about economic approaches to politics. So, first of all, let us start with the two broad definitions of economics. So, the first definition, according to Alfred Marshall, economics is a study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. It examines that part of individual and social action which is most closely connected with the attainment and with the use of the material requisites of well being. And the second is, according to Lionel Robbins, for the second definition, he states that economics is the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means that have alternative uses. So, these two definitions, the first one stressing material well-being and the latter efficient allocation, recall two of the three approaches to economics discussed earlier in this book. So the former definition offered by Marshall in Principles of Economics conforms to the idea of economics as material provisioning to satisfy needs and wants. If we broaden Marshall's definition to include non-material means, we have an idea of the economy or economic processes that is concerned with wealth, its production, distribution, and consumption. The latter definition has to do with adapting means to ends. Economics here is defined more abstractly in methodological terms. Economics does not refer to particular kinds of activities, but to a distinctive way of adapting resources to ends. It is the second definition that becomes central to this chapter. So, once we abstract economics from economic activities using the term to characterize situations of choice and scarcity, the door opens to an expanded domain of economics. So, right here we have the table that shows economics and politics as a method and substance. So, in this chapter, we introduce a new conception of how politics and economics relate to each other. So, in previous chapters, politics and economics were conceived in substantive terms. So, the subsequent theoretical task was to provide a coherent explanation of how these two domains affect each other. So, the economic approach to politics does not see political economy as the set of theoretical relations describing the connections between politics and economics. Instead, politics is considered economic, susceptible to analysis by economic method, insofar as political facts are characterized by choice and scarcity. So the relations between economics and politics conceived in substantive and methodological terms are illustrated by Table 1, wherein cells 1 and 4 refer to the traditional fields of economics and political science. Cell 1 is the intersection of neoclassical economic method and economic phenomena. It involves the rational pursuit of self-interest in perfect or imperfect market settings, the study of price movements and efficient allocation of resources. So, as you can see here, the fourth cell defines political science, traditionally conceived as the study of public patterns of power and authority within the state. Cell 3 is perhaps the most difficult to describe because it is unclear whether there is a distinctive political method, and if so, what is it? So, the second cell is the one of direct concern to us in this chapter. So, the application of economic methods to politics is evident in public choice theory, or game theory, and economic analysis of the law and political institutions. So, for the topic list, this is the topic list for the whole discussion, the whole video discussion. So, first, we will define the economic approach to politics, and then under that we will discuss rationality and efficiency. And for the next topic, we have applications of economic theories of politics, where it tackles about public choice theory, and then it branches down to normative public choice, positive public choice theory, the logic of collective action. And then next, we have the economic analysis of policy, And then we will discuss about economic analysis of institutions, which also branches out to institutions and market behavior, economic reasoning, and political institutions. And then we will have our overall conclusion of the whole discussion of chapter 6. So next, let's now move on to our first topic, which is defining the economic approach to politics. So, at the heart of an economic approach to politics are rational and um, efficiency, rational choice and efficiency. So, economic approach or economic reasoning, variously identified with subjective utility, the rational pursuit of self interest, cost and scarcity, marginal analysis, partial and general equilibrium, thinking, and allocative efficiency. So choice is made necessary by scarcity and in turn implies cost, opportunity cost if nothing else. So rationality, utility, and efficiency are also closely bonded in the same sense that a utility schedule is needed to motivate rational action and efficiency provides a yardstick to measure progress toward achieving goals. So if a person behaves rationally in the economist's sense, it amounts to saying he or she gets what he or she wants, subject to the constraints of the situation. Whether the aforementioned elements of the economic approach must go together, or whether they can be treated separately for some purposes, is an important question we do not try to answer here. So, in the next couple of slides, we will deal with rationality and efficiency. So first, we will discuss first on rationality. So what does it mean within the neoclassical framework to choose rationality? So to answer this question, we must first introduce some subsidiary concepts, which are preferences, beliefs, opportunities, and then the fourth one is actions. So for rationality, the concepts are preferences, beliefs, opportunities, and actions. And for preferences, we have preferences that describes the goal. It describes the goal states of the individual with respect to the environment. So goals must be weakly ordered effectively for consistent preferences to exist. Under beliefs, it means the choosing individual must have some information about alternative goals. For example, how obtainable they are, relations between different actions and outcomes, and costs in terms of direct expenditures of resources and foregone opportunities. And then for the third one, opportunities. So there are resources that define opportunities and constraints. And then for the last one, actions. There are the actions themselves that are usually taken as objects of explanation. So, preferences. What does preferences mean? So, if the object is to explain behavioral outcomes or simple actions, we must know what agents want, what they believe, and what their resources and constraints are. Preferences must assume a particular form. We must be able to rank outcomes, and that ranking must be transitive. In other words, we can say A is more preferred than B, which is B is more preferred than C. So A is preferred to B is preferred to C, and that A is preferred to C. So this preferences deals with the topic that we have in microeconomics, that the law of transitivity. So it's all about preferences. So if A is more preferred than B and B is preferred than C, then of course A is preferred than C. So while these requirements may seem straightforward when applied at the individual level, we will see later that transitivity requirement is by no means easily satisfied for groups. Next, we have beliefs. So, as Elster puts it, in order to know what to do, we first have to know what to believe with respect to the relevant factual matters. Hence, a theory of rational choice must be supplemented by a theory of rational belief. So the emphasis on beliefs implies that individuals do not act out of pure habit or emotion. They hold some beliefs about the causal structure of the world, beliefs that provide hypothesized links between alternative actions and their consequences defined in terms of utility. So rational belief, an example of this is what one wants and what one can get are two different things unless aspirations are completely an example of this is we may believe that avoiding eggs and eating oat bran will prolong our lives, but we may be wrong also. Or perhaps drinking can reduce stress. So this is the human way of rational beliefs. So we believe one thing and it may or may not be true. Moving on, we have opportunities. So the third component of the rational choice paradigm concerns resources and constraints. Sometimes this factor is omitted, not out of or neglect, but because it enters implicitly under preferences. Preferences and resources would seem to be distinct. So, what one wants and what one can get are two different things, unless aspirations are completely determined by possibilities. So, um, at a given moment, it makes sense to talk, as Elster does, of a feasibility set, the set of actions that are possible given logical, physical, and economic constraints. In doing this, resources and constraints are folded into the structure of preferences themselves and cease to operate externally. So, the fourth and final component is the actions themselves, the observed choices of agents. So these are the observed choices of agents. The aim of rational choice theory is to explain these choices. The core claim is that preferences and beliefs are exogenous and fixed, and that choices respond to changes in incentives or costs at the margin. So, the essence of a rational choice explanation embodies a conception of how preferences, beliefs, resources, and actions stand in relation to one another. So, this relation can be broken down into two parts. First, there is a consistency criterion that applies to the structure of preferences and beliefs. And then, second, there is a series of correspondence requirements. An action is rational when it stands in a relationship to preferences, beliefs, and resources. So, to sum up rationality, an action is rational when it stands in a relationship to preferences, beliefs, and resources. These actions are rational when they can be shown. So, to be the best actions possible to satisfy the agent's preferences given his or her beliefs, that the beliefs are rational given the evidence available, and finally, that the amount and quality of the evidence available can be justified in terms of cost or benefit ratios. So, we have efficiency. So, the second major component of the economic approach is the efficiency orientation. Since economic reasoning is a means ends calculus with available means inadequate to satisfy all ends, the economic method must assume a specifically defined condition of scarcity. Resources are inadequate to satisfy fully desires expressed in preference orderings. Thus, the general idea of efficiency has to do with the way resources are used. So, how efficient these resources can be used, how efficient are they not? It goes both ways. So, efficiency is a firm's productive efficiency has to do with the way it uses its inputs of land, labor, and capital to produce goods and services. It is using them most efficiently if it cannot rearrange them so as to produce more output with the same amount of inputs. For an individual consumer, efficiency means getting the greatest utility possible within the limits of budget constraints. So, we will move on to the next topic, and it will be reported by the next member of the report. That will be all.
Applications of economic theories of politics. There are three different economic approaches to politics. One, public choice. Second, economic analysis of policy. And then economic analysis of institutions. Public choice theory. It involves the application of economic methods to politics. It takes the tools and method that have been developed to quiet sophisticated analytical levels in economic theory and applies these tools and methods to political or governmental sectors, politics, and public economy. The transference of economic methods from economy to polity involves complications. 1. Complications center on the aggregation of individual preferences into collective or public outcomes. Second, problem of coordinating individual interests and choices to achieve collective outcomes. And then lastly, the interdependence of individual decisions. Public choice theory sees individual actors as central, whether operating as members of political parties, interest groups, or bureaucracies, whether elected or appointed, ordinary citizen, or chief executive. Public choice is different from conventional economics, not in its conception about the individual and the forces motivating action, but rather in the different constraints and opportunities offered by the political as opposed to market environment. Politics was referred to those institutions and processes in which individuals pursue their preferences when these preferences refer to goods that are interdependent or public. Normative public choice is the first strand of public choice theory, and it deals with the analysis of desirable properties of the political system. Uh, Example was in a representative democracy, individuals vote or otherwise register their preferences in collective outcomes. So, how can those individual preferences be consistently aggregated so as to produce collective decision? The consistently here refers to the same transitivity condition necessary for rationality at the individual level. So Kenneth Arrow discovered that individual preference orderings do not generally add up to a consistent social preference ordering, and the group cannot make up its collective mind. So Follick and Oppenheimer point out also that the assumption of individual rationality in explaining political outcomes, which are perforce collective, must have a consistent link between the individual and group ordering. One of the example was supposed we have three individuals and three choices of candidates or policies. The private preferences of voters 1, 2, and 3 are given for candidates or issues A, B, and C. Aggregating these individuals' orderings through pairwise votes among alternatives. So if A is compared to B, it dominates B. And if A dominates B and B dominates C, A should dominate C, obviously. However, it comes to this that C is preferred to A by voters 2 and 3. Therefore, individual consistent preference ordering do not define a consistent ordering at the group level. As I said earlier, this is the figure for the example I have been explaining that private ordering here and collective ordering differs. In private ordering, for voters 1, A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C. For voters 2, C is preferred to A and A is preferred to B. And then for voters 3, B is preferred to C and C is preferred to A. However, in collective ordering, A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C and C is preferred to A. The second strand was called positive public choice theory, and it attempts to devise explanations to the rules, choice processes, and its consequences. It assumes that citizens do fact act on the basis of self-interest in the economist sense, so that actual political outcomes can be explained on that basis. Anthony Downs' treatment of voting in An Economic Theory of Democracy 1957, that voting leads to a single outcome like electoral victory or defeat for all, a single party in power, and a single set of policies. This is the figure for the example 2, in which the X is the median, the C is conservative, and the L is the liberal. And the illustration tells that voters are arranged along the continuum from most conservative to most liberal. The median voter lies at point X. Half of the voters are conservative, half are liberal also. To assured victory, if Party A gears its program for more liberal voters, say at X plus 2, therefore, the Party B must aim all the voters to the left of X plus 2. The median voter identifies the reference point for victory. Moreover, voters X plus 1 and everyone else to the left of him or her defines a minimal winning collation. There are three components to this calculation, and one is the difference in utility deriving from one or the other party being in power. Second is the probability of affecting this result, that is, the probability of making a difference. And lastly, the rewards associated with practicing in the democratic processes.
The economic analysis of policy. The economic analysis of policy is an activity that begins after the task of public choice analysis are either accomplished or assumed. Public choice theory concerns itself with the method of combining individual preferences into social welfare functions and public choices. To make it simple, public choice theory happens when the preferences have already combined, communicated to decision makers, and the economic analysis of policy is when the decision makers is now choosing best alternative policies as to maximize satisfaction. There is a question that economists ask when approaching policy choices, and that is what is the appropriate dividing line between state and market. Economists starts with individual market, where individuals engage in countless activities, acquiring and giving up goods, services, and productive factors. In market society, government will be limited to doing what market cannot do or in case of market failure. And the simplest statement is this: the market allocates whenever it can do so efficiently. When it fails, government enters and provides through political action what could not be supplied through private initiative. The second matter that answers the questions of economists concerns how government should be organized. The first principle is that government should be organized so as to maximize exchange, that is, to expand the sphere of voluntary private exchange even within government. The second principle, or the Wexelian anonymity or near anonymity, he attempted to devise ways in which democratic governments could organize themselves to implement policies in consensual way. Wickel tried to introduce concrete voting arrangement that would assure the minimum of coercion within government, specifically on issues related to spending and taxation. As Stokey and Zegwasser point out, economists are likely to approach policy issues with the same questions as of private choice. What is it we want? What is it what we can get? The usual conditions are assumed: exogenous preferences, scarce resources, alternative paths of actions, beliefs about the relationships between alternatives and outcomes, and so on. And the policies and their outcomes affect many people. Also, when addressing policy questions, economists are most comfortable in discussing efficiency. Efficiency meant getting the most out of a given set of resources. In policy context, efficiency is the effectiveness of a policy has to do with whether it achieves its goal. A cost-effective policy may be one that out of a number of policies that achieve the same goal is the least costly. A cost-benefit policy is one that maximizes the difference between total benefits and total cost. We have here also the efficiency principle and the best example. Assume that individuals within a political system desire both the capacity to deter external military aggression and the capacity for defense should deterrence fail. Any policy that increases government's capacity for both deterrence and defense is preferred. The superior policy would be the best policy or the one that gives more satisfaction. And the next one is the economic analysis of institution. Political institutions are central to politics. It is an arrangement between economic units that defines and specifies the ways by which these units can cooperate or compete. Political institutions as applied to economics may define appropriate objects of exchange, the rules guiding the exchange process, and property rights with respect to both benefits and liabilities. And lastly, the economic analysis of institutions stresses the ways that institutions can foster instrumental cooperative behavior, reduce or increase the transaction cost, and provide the organizational basis for production and exchange.